How to become impossible to manipulate. Have you ever walked away from a conversation, feeling like you agreed to something you never wanted? Or found yourself saying yes, when every part of you wanted to say no? Maybe someone made you feel guilty, question your own judgment, or convinced you that your boundaries were somehow unreasonable. If so, you're not alone. Manipulation isn't always loud. It isn't always obvious. In fact, the most effective manipulation is often so subtle that you don't recognize it until much later. It can happen in dating, friendships, family, at work, even with people who genuinely care about you. The truth is, manipulation doesn't always come from evil intentions. Sometimes people manipulate because they fear rejection, sometimes because they want control, sometimes because they've learned unhealthy ways of getting their needs met. But regardless of the reason, you have the responsibility to protect your own peace. The good news is this: emotionally strong people aren't impossible to manipulate because they're cold or suspicious. They're difficult to manipulate because they understand themselves. They know their values. They trust their judgment. And they refuse to abandon their boundaries just to keep other people comfortable. Today, we'll explore the psychology of manipulation, why so many intelligent people fall for it, and how to become someone who is almost impossible to manipulate without becoming bitter, arrogant, or emotionally closed off. Let's begin. Number 1. Manipulation works best when you need approval. One of the biggest myths about manipulation is that it only works on weak people. It doesn't. It works on people who desperately want to be liked. Imagine someone asks you for a favor. You don't have time. You don't even want to do it. But instead of saying no, you immediately feel guilty. You worry they'll think you're selfish. So you agree, not because you wanted to, but because you wanted their approval. That's where manipulation often begins. When your fear of disappointing others becomes stronger than your commitment to your own boundaries. Emotionally strong men understand something important. Being kind doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give an honest answer, even if someone doesn't like it. Number 2. Guilt is one of the most common tools of manipulation. Have you ever heard phrases like, "If you really cared about me, after everything I've done for you, I guess I'll just do it myself"? On the surface, these statements sound emotional, but they can also pressure someone into making a decision out of guilt instead of genuine choice. Healthy relationships don't rely on emotional pressure. They rely on honest communication. There's nothing wrong with expressing disappointment, but there's a big difference between expressing feelings and using feelings to control someone else's behavior. Learning to recognize that difference protects your emotional freedom. Number 3. People who trust their own judgment are harder to control. Manipulation often creates self-doubt. Someone questions your memory, your intentions, your decisions. Over time, you begin asking yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm the problem. Self-reflection is healthy. Constant self-doubt is not. Emotionally grounded people don't assume they're always right. But they also don't automatically assume they're wrong just because someone disagrees with them. They gather information. They think carefully. Then they make decisions they can live with. That quiet confidence makes manipulation much less effective, because control becomes difficult when someone trusts their own mind. Number 4. Boundaries are your best defense. Imagine living in a house with no doors. Anyone could walk in, take what they wanted, leave whenever they pleased. That's what life feels like without boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls designed to keep everyone out. They're doors that let healthy people in, while keeping unhealthy behavior outside. A simple sentence like, "I'm not comfortable with that," can completely change the direction of a conversation. Not because it's aggressive, but because it's clear. Manipulative people often look for confusion. Healthy boundaries remove confusion. The clearer your standards become, the harder it is for someone to quietly move them. So far, we've discovered that manipulation often begins with the need for approval. That guilt can become a powerful form of control. That trusting your own judgment protects your independence. And that healthy boundaries are one of your greatest defenses. But the next lessons reveal something even more powerful. because they explain why emotionally calm people are harder to manipulate, why manipulators often target emotional reactions, and why the strongest response isn't always saying more. Sometimes it's saying less. Number 5. Manipulators often want an emotional reaction. Think about the last time someone pushed your buttons. Maybe they insulted you, questioned your character, or accused you of something unfair. What was their goal? Sometimes people simply want to express frustration, but other times, they're trying to make you react emotionally. Why? Because emotional people are easier to influence than calm people. The moment anger takes over, clear thinking becomes much harder. That's why emotionally mature men don't rush to defend themselves. They pause. They breathe. They ask themselves, do I need to respond? Or am I being pulled into someone else's emotional storm? That brief moment of self-control can completely change the outcome of a conversation. Number 6. Don't explain your boundaries over and over. Many people make this mistake. They say no, then spend the next 10 minutes trying to convince the other person their no is reasonable. The more they explain, the more opportunities they give someone to argue. Imagine saying, I'm not available this weekend. That's clear. Now imagine adding 5 different explanations. Suddenly, every explanation becomes something another person can debate. Can't you just change your plans? It's only a few hours. You're too busy these days. Emotionally strong people understand that respectful boundaries don't require endless justification. Being respectful is important, but constantly defending your decisions often weakens your position. Sometimes a calm, that doesn't work for me, is enough. Number 7. Pay more attention to actions than words. Words are easy. Promises are easy. Apologies are easy. Consistent behavior is much harder. Imagine someone repeatedly says, you can trust me, but they continue breaking promises, showing up late, ignoring your boundaries, making the same excuses. What should you believe? The words or the pattern? Emotionally mature people look for consistency. They understand that character is revealed through repeated actions, not occasional speeches. This simple habit protects you from many forms of manipulation, because manipulation often depends on beautiful promises that never become consistent behavior. Number 8. Don't let loneliness lower your standards. One of the times people become most vulnerable to manipulation is when they're afraid of losing someone. Maybe it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a job. The fear of being alone can make unhealthy behavior seem acceptable. You begin tolerating disrespect, broken promises, constant guilt, or emotional games, not because you believe they're healthy, but because you're afraid of having nothing. Strong men understand an important truth. It's better to be alone than constantly controlled. Loneliness may feel uncomfortable for a season. Manipulation can quietly damage your confidence for years. Choosing peace over unhealthy attachment isn't weakness. It's wisdom. A question that changes everything. Whenever someone is asking something of you, pause and ask yourself one question. Am I making this decision because I truly want to, or because I feel pressured? That single question creates awareness. And awareness breaks many forms of manipulation before they even begin. We've now explored why manipulators often seek emotional reactions, why clear boundaries don't need endless explanations, why actions matter more than promises, and why fear of being alone can make people easier to control. But the final lessons may be the most important, because they reveal how emotionally strong men protect their peace, why confidence makes manipulation difficult, and how to recognize healthy influence without becoming cold or suspicious of everyone around you. Number 9. Emotionally strong men are comfortable with disappointing people. This might sound harsh at first, but it's one of the biggest differences between emotionally dependent people and emotionally strong people. Many men spend their lives trying to make everyone happy. They avoid conflict, say yes when they mean no, stay silent when they should speak, and tolerate disrespect because they don't want anyone to dislike them. The problem is, the more you fear disappointing people, the easier you become to manipulate. Why? Because anyone who understands your fear can use it against you. Emotionally mature men understand something freeing. You can be respectful, kind, and compassionate, while still accepting that not everyone will agree with your decisions. Disappointing someone doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's simply the price of protecting your peace. Number 10. Learn to pause before making important decisions. Manipulation often depends on urgency. I need an answer right now. If you cared, you'd decide immediately. This is your only chance. Pressure reduces clear thinking. That's exactly why many manipulative situations feel rushed. Emotionally grounded people rarely make important decisions in emotional moments. Instead, they say things like, "Let me think about it. I'll get back to you tomorrow. I need some time before I decide." That small pause creates distance between emotion and decision. And that distance protects your judgment. You don't owe anyone an instant answer simply because they're demanding one. Number 11. Confidence comes from living by your values. The hardest person to manipulate is someone who knows what they stand for. If your values change depending on who you're talking to, people can easily influence your decisions. But when you've decided the kind of man you want to be, honest, respectful, disciplined, calm, reliable, then your decisions become much simpler. Instead of asking, "What will make this person happy?" you begin asking, "Does this align with my values?" That question changes everything. Because your life is no longer controlled by someone else's approval. It's guided by your own principles. Number 12. You don't have to win every argument. One of the most overlooked forms of emotional strength is knowing when to walk away. Some people argue endlessly, not because they want understanding, but because they want control. They twist your words, move the goalposts, refuse to listen. At some point, the healthiest response isn't another explanation. It's ending the conversation. Not every misunderstanding can be solved. Not every critic can be convinced. And not every battle deserves your energy. Emotionally strong men protect their peace. They don't waste it trying to win arguments that have no finish line. The bigger lesson: becoming difficult to manipulate isn't about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's not about assuming people have bad intentions. And it's certainly not about becoming cold or emotionally unavailable. It's about developing something much healthier. Self-respect. The stronger your self-respect becomes, the less you rely on guilt, pressure, fear, or approval to make decisions. Instead, you choose your actions with clarity, and that's where real freedom begins. Final message. If there's one thing to remember from this video, it's this. Manipulation only works when someone else controls your decisions. The moment you begin thinking for yourself, trusting your judgment, and living according to your values, that control begins to disappear. So don't spend your life trying to become someone nobody can influence. Instead, become someone who can't be pressured into abandoning who they are. Protect your boundaries. Take your time when making important decisions. Pay attention to actions more than words. Accept that not everyone will approve of you. And remember this: the strongest men aren't the ones who control other people. They're the ones who have learned to control themselves. Because once you master your own mind, it becomes incredibly difficult for anyone else to manipulate it. And that's one of the greatest forms of strength a man can have. Click the subscribe button, like, share, and follow for more.